Are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Were the only words I desperately needed to hear the day I found myself standing atop the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, believing beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had not one other course of action to take, but to die by these two hands from lethal emotional pain. I believed I was useless. I felt I was worthless. I thought I had no value. I truly believed that everyone in my family thought I was their greatest burden. On all four of those accounts, I was terribly wrong, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I only saw pain. What is the one thing you want to happen when you find yourself in excruciating physical pain? What do you want that pain to do? You want it to stop, go away, or end. That's physical pain. I argue that brain pain is at the very least 300,000 times worse than any physical pain I've ever experienced in my life. And I promise you, and you'll know after this story, I have experienced extreme physical pain in my existence, in my short 39 years on this planet. But what led a 19-year-old young man to the Golden Gate Bridge, ready to take his life, believing he had no future? In order to tell that story, we have to stop here and go all the way back to the day I was born. August 30th, 1981, in the great city of San Francisco, in the beautiful state of California, born to biological parents Marcia Silvera and Martino Perales. Martino was half Mexican and half Italian, and Marcia was Arawak Indian, Portuguese, Jamaican, Scottish, Irish, English, Sephardic, Jew, and Black. And Martino and Marcia had two things going for them. They had their unconditional love for each other and that same love for their two infant boys, me, then named Giovanni Gabriel Prasad Perales, and my brother, Jordash. How he got one name and I got stuck with four, I'll never know. But they had us, and they had each other. But they had a great many things going against them. They had no feasible legal income. They had to hustle to survive. And to hustle to survive, they had to do, score, or sell drugs. They would leave me and my brother in seedy motels on barely a box spring for a mattress over concrete slab floors, the kind of place you paid for by the hour, and if you didn't, you were out. And they would leave us there, lying next to dangerous drug paraphernalia. Had we touched, could have killed us. They'd leave us lying there. Had we fallen to the ground below, we could have died. Until one fateful day, one seedy motel clerk made just about his most unseedy decision. He heard our screams and our cries in his mind one too many times, and he did us the first solid anybody ever would. He called the police. And the police came in with Child Protective Services, and they swooped us up, and they placed us into the system, the foster care system, a system that was in shambles, a system that allowed kids to age out into homelessness without a penny in their pockets, a system that allowed other kids to be abused and neglected by the very foster parents set to protect them. A system, for all the good it does in this country, still allots for both of those things to occur on a regular basis. My brother and I bounced around from home to home. The idea is that me and my brother Jordash would be adopted together. But do you think that's what happened? Not by a long shot. We both got a vicious strain of bronchitis, and my only full-blooded brother died. Now, people have said to me quite callously so, as an adult, "Kevin, why does that matter? You were an infant. How did that affect you?" Well, if you don't know, the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are the most crucial for their ability to connect, adapt, attach, and be well in any future. And if the first 3 to 9 months of an infant's life are filled with nothing but consistent trauma, at some point something's got to give, and they're going to have a hell of a hard time. That time came for me at 17 and a half, when on stage in front of 1,200 people, I had a complete mental breakdown. My brain broke. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back again. Back to being adopted by Patrick and Deborah Hines. I bounced around from home to home after my brother died. I landed in the home of Peter and Deborah Muller. Peter was in the Army, as they do often has to be restationed, and Debbie was a housewife. And Peter and Debbie Muller were a transitional home for kids. That meant that many kids funneled in and out of their house at the same time, and foster parents from all over the area would come over and see who they were going to take home and adopt. And one fateful and wonderful day, a lovely young woman named Deborah Joan Hines walked in their door. Debbie Hines walked in their door, fully expecting to take home a little girl. She was looking for a little girl to be the sister of Elizabeth Catherine, the girl she and Patrick Kevin Hines had already taken in. They wanted to give Elizabeth a sister. Do I look like a sister to you? The first thing Debbie saw on the carpeted floor before her when she walked into the Muller's home was then red-headed, wavy-haired Giovanni with my famous red rubber ducky overalls. In her journal, she said that was the moment she fell in love, and that's how I know this part of the story. She went home to Pat Hines. He said, let's do this. Let's take him in. Why? Because he needs us. And they took me in at 9 months of age. But there was a problem. I was violently ill all day, every day, sick as a dog. Doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, no one could tell Pat and Deborah what was wrong with their new-to-be son. Until one specialist came forward and said, Pat, Debbie, there's nothing physically wrong with this child. It's all emotional, 9 months of age. Now, we all know that wasn't exactly the case. You see, my biological parents, for the first few months of my formative months, have been feeding me what they could steal. My first diet consisted of Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk. Horrible. My gut to brain health was very, very poor. I was very sick from the very beginning. But being in the Hines home, in the first 30 days, neither Debbie or I slept soundly because of my sickness. They literally had $1 million workup on me and no one could tell them what was wrong. On the 30th day of being in the Hines home, Debbie came to my crib, she leaned in, and she said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. But if you don't knock this off, we're going to have to give you back, which is a complete contradiction. But that was the first night in 30 days that we both slept soundly, as if my infant mind had fully heard and understood her words. She says she came to my crib the next morning, leaned in. She says, I opened my eyes, looked up at her, and I smiled. And she says it was a moment to be had. Clearly, it was just gas. But nonetheless, one thing was abundantly clear. I was home, and I was a Hines. Growing up in the Hines household was a beautiful thing. We wanted for nothing, we needed for nothing. Pat and Debbie Hines worked tirelessly to get everything they ever earned the hard way. Debbie Hines would end up being a 49-year nurse in San Francisco, having every nursing position you can think of. She would even be the mental health nurse of San Francisco for some time in the city department. She's an amazing human being and a gifted woman and the most optimistic woman you could ever imagine. And Pat Hines would be one of the most prominent San Francisco bankers of his time, retiring also at 49 years. And he would have had a really hard life growing up. His parents, just like my birth parents, also had substance use disorder, but they had primary alcoholism. As a matter of fact, many of his family did as well. Of his aunts and uncles, there were 9, 2 were stillborn, 7 remained, 5 would die of liver cirrhosis, failure, alcoholism. Both of his parents would die of liver failure, cirrhosis, alcoholism at 49 and 54. He would be left with about $17 in his pocket to make his way in the world, and he would have to fight for everything he earned the hard way. He would put himself through college, and he would go on to become an economist and then a banker. Pat and Debbie Hines could have had natural-born children, but they opted to take in 3 kids from 3 separate families into one and make a melting pot of a family. Me, I'm mixed. My brother's black, my sister's white, parents are Irish and German, people were confused. Women would cross the street to talk to my mom when she was walking with us, and they would say, how did all of that happen? And that's when my mom would reply, oh, you know, different fathers, which was epic because it was true, but it made them run right back across the street. We dealt with people in restaurants that weren't kind to us because of what we looked like as a family. As a matter of fact, some people wouldn't allow us to eat at their restaurants. We got up, went somewhere else, ate something else. We were happy. We were filled with hope, joy, and unconditional love. Growing up in the Hines home was an absolute bliss. Sure, Pat and Debbie had their flaws, but they loved us and we loved them, and they are our mom and dad. Growing up, we ended up getting into high school, me and my sister at first. My brother was younger. And in high school, I really began to flourish. I began to become rather eclectic. I was in the theater department. I was a champion wrestler. My football team would eventually go to state. I was involved as much as I could with as many things as I could be. But during a theater show at 17 and a half in my junior year, on stage playing a character called Gatch in the show How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, my brain broke in front of 1,200 people. I had a complete paranoid delusion, and to be fair, I had been spiraling downward mentally for some time, but didn't know why, and my family didn't know what to do about it. We had never experienced this before. But on that stage, in front of 1,200 people, I began to believe that 1,200 people were going to simultaneously rise, rush the stage, and end my life. What would you do if you thought 1,200 people were simultaneously coming to kill you? I imagine you answered, run. I ran off that stage. I ran to the lobby. I was met there by Mr. John Fennell, and he sits me down in the theater treasurer's chair, which was very fitting because at the time I was the theater treasurer. The kid with no conceptual math skills, by the way. That was a bright idea. Nonetheless, he sits me down. First of all, let's talk about John Fennell, the theater director. John Fennell was a failed actor turned high school thespian director, but he was the best teacher any of us kids would ever have. And John Fennell was a great man. He was a tough SOB. He was hard to deal with, and he was difficult, but he was a great man and the best teacher we ever had. He was a mentor, a friend, a hero of mine, and like a second father figure. If you did anything other than what John Fennell told you to do on stage, he'd take his left thumb, he'd place it in the right corner pocket of his mouth, making a loud echoing popping sound throughout the entire theater, and he would say, Hines, he always called me Hines, he would say, Hines, that's the sound of your head coming out of your... Anyway, we won't get into that, that's not appropriate. But he would say that, and he would say it multiple times a day to me, because I was always messing up. But John meets me in the lobby, and he sits me down and says, Hines, can you please finish the performance? It's not even intermission yet. What are you doing? And I just babbled incoherent nonsense for the next 10 minutes. I couldn't make out 3 words in a row that made sense. John, of course, called my mom. And Debbie came to pick me up. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes as she gazed into mine. For I could see within them that she saw within mine the depths of insanity brewing inside them. Very soon thereafter, she took me to go see my first psychiatrist, Dr. J. Kevin Rist. This guy. Now, I think she only picked J. Kevin Rist because his name is J. Kevin and my name is J. Kevin, which is not how you pick a psychiatrist. They said Dr. Rist was one of the best in the field. His secretary, his apprentice, people we barely knew who talked about him. Dr. Rist is one of the best in the field. Dr. Rist himself would tell me every session. He would find somewhere in the session and say, you know, Kevin, I'm one of the best in the field. Yeah, Doc, you're also one of the most humble, you know. But anyway, Dr. Rist was a good dude. He cared about his patients, but Dr. Rist was in his own pain. Dr. Rist also, just like my biological parents, just like my dad Patrick's parents, had substance use disorder. Just like John Fennell had primary alcoholism, which I didn't talk about. Dr. Rist was on methamphetamines the entire time he treated me and his other patients. He would lose 9 of his patients in 1 year to suicide. Dr. Rist was in a world of pain, and he needed help, and he wasn't getting it. I have no ill will toward the man. He's in desperate need of help, and Dr. Rist and John Fennell would be the first 2 people that I truly grew to care about, one of them who I love dearly, who would take their life and die by suicide. Those are the first 2 suicides I would experience of 10 suicides in my life of people that were close to me. I've lost 10 people to death by suicide from lethal emotional pain. And that's 10 people too many. But those are stories we don't have time for. Seeing Dr. Rist prior to knowing he was on methamphetamines, for years, in fact, I ended up at 17 and a half to 18 on this rocky, tumultuous road of skyrocketing to manic euphoric natural highs. But once you go up, you must come down, come crashing down to the dark abysses of depression and pain. And I'd come down and I would crash, and I would crash hard. And I began to become very aberrant and self-violent and angry and aggressive in my mother's home. And I started punching holes in all of her drywalls. And I was just so sick and so ill. So in fact that she removed the door to my room because I kept slamming it so often. I was just a difficult young man. But it wasn't because that was my natural reaction to things. I was so mentally unstable and so unwell, and I needed so much help, and I wasn't getting it. On my 18th birthday, after 120 holes punched in 120 walls in the house, my mom said, kick rocks and call your father. She said, you're not welcome here anymore. She was the most optimistic woman in the world, and she'd lost her optimism for me. And I totally understand it. I don't blame her at all. She had to do what she had to do. She had 2 other kids in her house to protect and keep safe. Not that I would ever hurt any of them, but she did seem scared. I went to live with my father, and I'll never forget that night on my birthday, my 18th birthday, closed on the porch in the rain, and my dad comes to pick me up, and I go to his house, and I'm a mess. And he doesn't know what to do with me. He's freaking out. And we end up in this tumultuous relationship where we're fighting tooth and nail every day, screaming matches, yelling matches you can't imagine. Police should have been called, domestic issues in the house for sure. Yelling and screaming that just could echo through the halls of the 5 houses next to us, if you will. And I go from 18 to 19 on this skyrocketing into mania and falling into a depression every week. Every week I'm finding myself so depressed, I find myself at 19 thinking of suicide, thinking of ending my life. I absolutely believed that I was worthless. I would look in the mirror and I hated every fiber of my being. I would look in the mirror and it was as if the mirror was a second person looking back at me, yelling at me, screaming at me, whispering at me, horrible things, mean things, negative things. I started to have auditory and visual hallucinations because I have the diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, which means that I have the ups and the downs of bipolar disorder, the panic attacks and the anxiety attacks and the stress attacks, but I also have very severe visual and auditory hallucinations where I'm seeing and hearing things that nobody else can see or hear, but I'm believing them to be 100% real. But I'm not telling anybody about them because I fear their reaction. So I was seeing things like death himself hover through my window with his staff and blade in his right bony arm, his scythe. He reached out his other bony hand, turned it upside down. His eyes would light to fire in his skull face as he would say, "Come home with me," night after night, Monday through Monday, but I never told anybody. You see, my new friends, I got really good at one thing: silencing my pain. If y'all are going to learn one thing from me today, and one thing alone, let it be this: never again silence your pain. Your pain is valid, your pain is worthy of my time and others, and your pain matters simply because all of you do. When we silence our pain, it only bubbles and festers and gets bigger and louder, and it bursts in things like rage, aggression, violence, substance use disorder, suicidal thoughts, ideas, or actions. A pain shared is a pain halved. Remember that. When you recognize your true value, you can tell your truth inside your pain, so you never have to live it alone. At 19, I sat at my desk, I took out my notebook, I opened that notebook to a certain page, and I penned that note, my suicide note, to my mom and my dad, my brother and my sister, my best friend Jake Lewis at the time, and my girlfriend at the time. I wrote that note, and this is what it said: "Mom, I love you, but you're not always right. Dad, I love you, but stop bringing the office home. This isn't work. I said to my little brother Joseph, wanted to be nothing more than the greatest DJ on the West Coast, should be a household name. I said to my best friend, you'll find another best friend, as if that's remotely how it works." I put that note in my shoulder bag, that shoulder bag by the door. At 6 in the morning, the next morning, I walked into my father's room and I startled him awake. He wore a breathing apparatus, a sleep apnea machine. He took it off. He said, "Kevin, what's wrong?" I said, "Nothing, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I love you." In my mind, it was for the very last time. He said, "Kevin, I love you too, but it's 6 in the morning. I don't have to be working until 9. Go back to bed." And he fell as soundly asleep as quickly as he had awoken, sounding like Darth Vader snoring. I walked around to the other side of the bed. I sat on the carpeted floor and I rocked my body back and forth in tears, begging myself to tell the one man who loved me the most in the world the truth. All the while, hearing voices in my head telling me I had to die and I had no option. At 6:30, I went back to my room. At 7 a.m., my father entered. He said, "Kevin, I'm very worried about you. I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today?" I said, "Sorry, Dad. I've got to be at City College today." He said, "Kev, we'll go to the beach. Kev, we'll go to the movies. Kev, we'll do whatever you want. I just feel like you need to be with me today." He tried his best with what he knew. But nobody taught Patrick Kevin Hines suicide prevention techniques. Nobody taught Patrick Hines that by asking the direct and blunt question, "Are you thinking of killing yourself, and have you made plans to take your life?" It actually gives people permission to speak on their pain. And statistically, more people will tell the truth than not. As a matter of fact, more people will tell the truth by asking, are you thinking of killing yourself, than are you thinking of suicide? That actual wording phrase really matters. But he didn't know that because nobody taught him that. So what happened next that day was not his fault. It was no one's fault. It wasn't even my fault. I knew not what I was doing. I wasn't selfish by going to the Golden Gate Bridge and jumping off. I was sick and I needed help, needed recovery, needed wellness. People who die by suicide are not selfish. As a matter of fact, they believe they're doing people a favor by dying. They believe that they are alleviating a stress of somebody else or their family, or that they're everyone's greatest burden. It's not because they want to die. It's because they believe they have to. Two categorically different things. On that day, I found myself on a bus getting out to the Golden Gate Bridge. I sat in the very back row in the middle seat looking out upon everyone, and I began to cry, softly, mildly, and then waterfalls flowing from my eyes, mucus dripping from my nose. Then I began to yell out at a crowded bus full of people, leave me alone, but I don't want to die. Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you? And now if they weren't before, 100 people are looking down the barrel of the bus at me but saying absolutely nothing except for one man. The man to my left is saying to the man next to him while pointing at me with his thumb and a smile on his face, what the hell's wrong with that kid? And that's what's wrong with some of society today. This innate human ability we have to see someone, anyone, in the greatest lethal emotional pain we've ever experienced, but feel nothing for them but fear of them and apathy toward them. That's his or her problem, but it ain't mine. I got things to do, people to see, and places to go. I formidably disagree with this notion. I believe if we are nothing else on this beautiful planet, we are at the very least supposed to be one thing together, our brothers and sisters' keeper. Are we not? We are not here for our personal betterment. We're not here to make a buck. We're here to give back to those we know, those we love, those we don't know from Adam, and yes, those we don't even like. What we're not here to do is hurt each other or damage each other with our words and our actions. The bus got to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot. Everybody deboarded. There I was, crying like a child, hoping and wishing and praying that one person would say to me, hey kid, are you okay? Is something wrong, or can I help you? I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. Those words I said in the beginning of this presentation. Are you okay? Is something wrong? Can I help you? I would have told them everything and begged them to save me. I couldn't tell my father that morning, but on this day I wanted to tell anybody on that bus. I was ambivalent. I wanted to live, but my brain was trying to kill me. Everyone gets off the bus. I'm sitting there crying. The driver turns to me and says, come on, kid, get off the bus. I got to go. I walked right up to him. He motioned for me to get off the bus. I walked down those 2 steps that felt like 2,000, walked across the 2-mile stretch of walkway that is the Golden Gate Bridge for 40 minutes crying like a child. Picked a particular light rail, leaned my body over the light rail, crying my tears to the waters below. Eventually a woman approached me and smiling, and I thought, this is it. This lady's going to save me. I don't have to die today. She smiled, pulled out a digital camera and said, will you take my picture? I couldn't believe it. How could she not see my pain? I took her picture several times. She walked away. I said, absolutely nobody cares. The furthest thing from the truth. Everybody cared. Every member of my family, every one of my friends, my acquaintances would have been there to rip me from that rail to safety because of how much they cared. My brain wasn't allowing me to care. My brain was trying to kill me as I desperately tried to cling to life. It was then that I ran forward and catapulted myself over the rail. But that's not the important part of this story. The millisecond my hands left that rail and my legs cleared it, it was an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. I fell 220 feet, 25 stories, nearing 95 miles per hour at the speed of terminal velocity. I hit that water like a ton of bricks. The impact reverberated through my legs and shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae. I missed severing my spinal cord that day by 2 millimeters. But a miracle happened that day. A sea lion came to my aid in the water and kept me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. Amazing. Phenomenal. I named him Herbert. He's my hero. This creature saved me when nobody else could. I got to the hospital. They did a 10.5-hour back surgery on me that replaced my shattered vertebrae with titanium. But the second saviors in this experience were the Coast Guard, who brought me to the ambulance that got me to that hospital. The Coast Guard officers saved my life in the water, and they were the first responders on scene to keep me safe. They put me in a neck brace, strapped me in from head to toe, and started asking questions. Kid, do you know what you just did? Yeah, I just jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Why? I don't know. I thought I had to die today is what I said. Guy leans in, he says, son, do you understand how many people we pull out of these waters that are already gone? I said, no, sir, and I don't want to know. He said, I'm going to tell you anyway. He said, young man, this unit alone has pulled out 26 dead bodies from these waters and one live one, you. That gave me a great deal of perspective. And it helped me understand what I could never, ever, ever do again. Attempt to take my life. I live with chronic and regular thoughts of ending my life, but I'll never die that way. Each and every time I become suicidal, I will beg and plead someone to keep me safe. Each and every time I'm suicidal today, with chronic thoughts of ending my life, I now say 4 simple but effective words. I need help now. And if the first person I turn to is unwilling to help me or unable, I'll turn to the next and the next and the next until I find someone willing to empathize with my pain. I have been at the airport and I have asked a TSA agent and told them I need help now and told them why. I missed my flight that day, almost got on the no-fly list, but they kept me safe and they got me to a safe place after that. I am self-aware with my diagnosis. I believe in myself, my ability to be well. I work tirelessly, in fact, to do so. I follow a 10-step regimen called the Art of Wellness to stabilize my brain, mind, behavior, mental, spiritual, physical health, and well-being. I work so hard to be better brain well, and you can too. All of us can fight for our mental health because we all have mental health. It's not something that's unique to one of us or 2 of us. It's something that we all have to deal with every single day. Some of us have mental health diagnoses. Some of us have mental health conditions or challenges. Others just have mental health qualms. Either way, we all have to work toward better brain well-being. I've been given the gift of a second chance at life. I'm not going to squander that second chance at life eating potato chips, playing video games all day. I'm going to do that sometimes, just not every day. What I am going to do is travel the world pre-COVID, 320 days a year, sharing my story, giving back, sharing how people can fight the pain in spite of the pain, despite of the pain, to thrive today, one day at a time, to be here tomorrow, and every day after that. You are valued, you are worthy, you matter, and you are intended to be here until your natural end. Suicide never has to be the solution to your problem because it is in fact the problem. You are a gift to this world. You are meant to be here. Think of all the children who never make it past the womb. My wife and I know that pain all too well. Our boy Jack Ryan lived 8 weeks and no more. But he wasn't intended to be here in physical form. You all are, for the simple fact I'm looking into your eyes through this lens. I know you're supposed to be here. My friends, be here tomorrow and every darn day after that. You're loved, you're valued. Stay. TAOW, the art of wellness. The art of wellness is the technique I utilize to stay better brain, mind, behavioral, mental, spiritual, and physically well. It's something that I developed years ago and created my own personal mental health emergency plan. Let's break it down. Let's start with step 1 of 10, therapy. Therapy can mean anything to anyone, in the sense that, for me, therapy is multifaceted. I use talk therapy or teletherapy. I use breathing therapy and breathwork therapy. I use blue wave lightbox technology therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and so many other forms of therapy, including music therapy and art therapy. So when you find the right therapy for you, enact it into your life and your world, and make it part of your regular routine for better wellness. I use therapy in all its multiple forms because I searched out and found reputable, proven forms of treatment and therapy that help me. Nutrition. Proper nutrition is a key to your mental well-being. Your gut to brain health is so very crucial. Your gut biomes are directly connected to your brain chemistry. So when you eat foods that are hard to digest, that are not nutritious, that are lacking in good minerals and nutrients, and that are processed foods from boxes and plastic bags, you're damaging not only your gut and your gut's membranes, but you're damaging your brain cells at the cellular level. And so eating a balanced, nutritious meal that is high in nutrients and minerals and vitamins, B, C, D, and E, high in phytochemicals and flavonoids, high in things like healthy fats and omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. All of these things can help you with a well-balanced meals every day to stay in the realm of proper nutrition. When you eat poorly, you can deal with things like mental aggression, fatigue, sleep issues, cognitive function decline. Eating poorly damages your brain. That's to put it bluntly. Proper nutrition is key for your mental health. And it's hard for everyone to be able to eat properly when we live in America where there are food deserts, places in America in low-income areas that don't get the same services that high-income areas get. I'm not saying it's easier or if there's always a solution to this problem, but do the best you can to eat proper nutritious foods to feed your body, to feed your mind. Let's talk about exercise. Exercising 23 minutes a day of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better brain health. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood. Who doesn't want that? If you're physically capable, get down in your body and get to work. 23 minutes of rigorous exercise twice a day, 24 hours of better mood. Who doesn't want that? We all do. I often exercise twice a day to feel that brain boost, that endorphin spike, that dopamine hit, and reducing my cortisol levels, or what's called my stress hormone. I do this to stabilize mentally. It helps keep me sane every day. When I don't exercise, I don't feel well at all. And so I do it as often as I can to feed that body. I call it sanity over vanity. It's not about what you look like on the outside. It's about how you feel on the inside. Now, during this COVID pandemic, I gained about 40 pounds, eating poorly. I'm just gonna be frank with you. I went off my routine and it really took me some time, but I'm back on it. I'm exercising 3 to 5 days a week, every week. I'm feeling so much better. I'm eating better foods and I'm getting back into the lean place I wanna be. Let's talk about sleep. Sleep is such a crucial part of the 10-step plan to the art of wellness. A lack of sleep and a lack of sleep function also causes things like cognitive decline, memory loss, debilitating issues with your mental capacity. I know from personal experience. I have lived with insomnia on multiple occasions in my life. Actually, as recently as 2 years ago, let me tell you a story. So two and a half years ago now, I developed second-degree burns from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, bloody blisters throughout my entire body. Nobody knew why. It turns out one of my medications had poisoned my organs. I was on what's called the tipping point of Stevens-Johnson syndrome. That's when your insides boil outside of you. I was near death. The doctors took me off of all psychotropic medications in one day. I had a complete 48-hour withdrawal-based psychosis. It was awful. I saw things you couldn't imagine. I saw the answers to the universe. We'll stop there. And in that timeline of a 30-week period of feeling like knives and needles were coming from my bones through my skin across my entire body, the most excruciating pain I've ever experienced, I could not sleep. Of course, being in that much pain all day long, you couldn't sleep at all, not a wink. And I developed 5 sleep disorders simultaneously: parasomnia, sleep apnea, insomnia, sleep paralysis, and narcolepsy. I would fall asleep while in the middle of a conversation with anyone. I was so ill and so mentally unstable. Because I wasn't sleeping every day, I was having hallucinations all day long. Not sleeping leads to psychosis all by itself. Couple that with my diagnosis, bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, I was in a world of trouble. I had to find a way back to better sleep function. So I did what I did back when I had insomnia in my third psych ward stay of 9. I went back to my old habits. I've got my old music therapy. 20 minutes before I would go to bed, I would listen to whale, ocean, and rainforest noises and music, proven to alter brainwaves and sleep patterns. My circadian rhythm got back intact. I was once again sleeping. I was once again on the right meds. I was feeling so much better and so much safer. Sleep is crucial for your mental well-being. If you're not getting enough sleep, you need to find out how to. Let's talk about education. Education it's a two-parter. Education for yourself, education for those who love you, care for you, empathize with you, or know you, or are your colleague. Education for yourself is about reading every book you can on the diagnosis you've been given, if you've been given a diagnosis at all. I educate myself as to my diagnosis, as to suicide prevention, mental health law. I read up on these things every day so I can stay up to the minute information on these topics. I love the book Bipolar for Dummies. It's like my second Bible. It's amazing. It's a phone book looking thing that they have one for every mental illness. If you just put the mental illness, the mental struggle before For Dummies, then you can find the book that's for you. Everybody has issues. Get your copy today. As a matter of fact, in Bipolar for Dummies by Candida Fink and Joe Cranack, I wrote to them and said, thank you so much for this amazing book. It has changed my life. They wrote back to me and said, how would you like to write an article in our third edition, which I got to. So check out that third edition only. But I also read and shared the book, Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder, so I can learn to love myself better and be more forgiving of myself and my behaviors, but also so I can give back to the people in my family and friend network that want to be my personal peer protectors, the people that want to opt into my plan of mental health and mental health emergency, so that when I'm not safe mentally and when I'm not well mentally, they can get my back when I can't take care of myself. So educating myself and educating my family members was crucial to find a better, happy medium. As a matter of fact, when I gave my dad Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder, this is a man who was a tough Sunset Irishman. He adopted me and made me his son. He played ice hockey as the goalie with no mask when he was a kid. He had a rough and tumble childhood, but here he was trying to relate to me, and he ended up becoming the best man at my wedding. There was no other choice, and all my friends were upset. But I didn't care, because he and I got to a place where our relationship was so tight and so great, from the tumultuous place it used to be in during my mental health struggles, and now we're doing wonderfully. It's fantastic. Let's talk about medication. Medication is crucial for some people, but not for all. It's not the end-all be-all. It's not the cure. It's something that helps some people and not everybody. Medication I take every day with 100% accuracy at the same time every day without fail, and I never go off my meds without telling anybody. I've done this many times in the past, but I'm never doing it again. Every time I've gone off my meds without telling anybody, because I think, oh, I'm doing better now and I'm cured, which is what your brain tells you when you feel that way, I went right back into a psych ward. So no more of that. I'm being very strict with my meds, very calculative, very focused, and I recommend you do the same if you're on meds. Please don't go off medications abruptly without telling a doctor, so you can titrate down appropriately so it doesn't go out of your system and make you all wonky inside and having things like hallucinations and terrible effects from going off too fast. Medication can help some of us and not all of us, and finding the right medication, I can be very frank with you, is and can be very hard, and it can take a long period of time. I have lived with the diagnosis of bipolar type 1 with psychotic features since I was 17 and a half years of age. I'm now 39, so I'm dating myself, but that's okay. I've lived with bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features since I was 17 and a half, and I can tell you that looking at it now, I'm grateful for the meds I'm on today, but it's been a long and arduous journey to get here. Let's talk about meditation. Meditation is something that can literally benefit all of us. Look at the U.S. Marine Corps. A great many bases are now doing meditation base-wide, which is having a tremendous effect on lowering rates of depression, lowering rates of suicidal ideation, increasing alertness and well-being, and they're having a great effect. People use meditation to center themselves, to calm themselves, to bring their bodies and minds to a complete siloed state. I utilize breathing techniques called resonance breathing, along with meditation and mindfulness techniques to stabilize my mental stability. I wake up in the morning, and before I check my phone, before I check Instagram or any social media or my phone calls or my emails, the first thing I do is do 30 resonance breaths. In through the nose 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out through pursed lips like a whistle but no sound for 8 seconds. I do that 30 times. In the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening before I eat. I do them all because they help me stay stable. And while I'm doing that, I'm seated alone in my own space. It's my quiet time, and I bring myself to a complete and total cool and collected calm, and I make myself feel so much better. And waking up like that is a blessing and a gift. And when I find myself in a panic attack, which I get panic attacks, an anxiety attack, which I have, a stress issue, I always try to remind myself to get my Calm app out or my Headspace app and do some meditative breathing. It has helped me every single time. There's never been one instance where I've meditated where I said that didn't help me. Never once, because it always balances me out. What this does, active breathing like this, resonance breathing, what it does is it lowers your heart rate, your blood sugar, your blood pressure, quells a panic attack, an anxiety attack, or an adrenaline rush. It's quite frankly amazing. It can do so much for you and your heart health and your well-being. So meditate today. I highly recommend it. Let's go on to advocacy. This is another two-parter, one of my favorites. Advocacy. What does it mean to advocate for yourself and to advocate for others? Self-advocacy versus legislative advocacy. Self-advocacy is, what does that mean? It means communicating. It means opening up. It means being honest about your pain and what you're going through. It means knowing your clinicians and your physicians and carrying a list with you of what you need to tell them. It means knowing the side effects of your medication, how they affect you and what they're doing to you, and what you need to tell your doctor the next time you see them when you're going through a hard time. Self-advocacy means working really hard to be your best voice, being vocal in your pain and not being silent in your pain so you can defeat your pain. You see, if you're going to learn one thing from me today and one thing alone, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Never again silence your pain. Your pain is valid, your pain is worthy, your pain matters because you do. So advocating for yourself is like unsilencing that pain, unburdening yourself and telling your truth so you can survive it at any cost. That's self-advocacy. Legislative advocacy, let me give you a prime example, is going out and doing work in the public sector to give back to your community in a way that tells your story, volunteers for a cause, volunteering for a cause outside of yourself. People who volunteer for a cause outside of themselves are 63% more mentally healthy than those that don't. That's a fun tip you didn't know. And legislative or public policy advocacy is so important. And we have Hill Day every year on Capitol Hill, well, pre-COVID, of course, and again, post-COVID, it'll happen too. Hill Day is the mental health day where mental health legislators from all around the country go to Hill Day and advocate for different mental health bills and laws on the platform. And so I will give you a prime example of legislative advocacy that worked really, really well. My father founded the Bridge Rail Foundation in 2006 after the film The Bridge came out by Eric Steele, a film that portrayed the deaths at the Golden Gate Bridge and why no one was doing anything about it. Paul Muller, Dave Hall, and Patrick Hines got together with a woman named Alexis Durat St. James, who funded the initial founding, the Bridge Rail Foundation. And they got together and they decided, we're going to fight to raise a net at the Golden Gate Bridge, and we're not going to stop fighting until it happens. I worked tirelessly with them. I was on their original board for years, and we worked every single day to make this a reality. 14 years later, they approved the net. 16 years later, they're still building it. It's going to be finished in 2023. It's a long and arduous journey, but it just goes to show you that a small group of like-minded people can do anything if they put their minds to it. We had a lot of opposition. We had a lot of people fighting against us, but we worked tirelessly, and eventually the Bridge District, who owns and runs the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, and they, as like a private entity like no other bridge in America, they finally agreed to, and they actually worked tirelessly to fund this effort. We got together, and the bridge's net is being built right now. As of 2023, the net will be completed on the 360,000 square feet that is the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will then become the largest and brightest beacon for suicide prevention all around the world. There will be nothing like it. It will be simply amazing. Not one more person will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge. And that's a piece of legislative advocacy that worked. And it's being put into place right now, and it's going to save lives. Fantastic. Glad to be a part of it. Glad to be a cog in the wheel of such immeasurable change. Let's talk about coping mechanisms or coping strategies. What are coping mechanisms? They're things you can do that significantly benefit your mental, brain, mind, behavioral, or physical health that are hobbies. They're things that you can do that make you feel happy and hopeful and filled with gratitude and resilience. They're things like grounding techniques, socializing with family and friends. I know we can't physically be with our family right now, but we can FaceTime them or Facebook phone call them, or Zoom call them, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever you want to call it. As long as you're looking at them on the screen and you can have a conversation with them and tell them how much you love them, and they can repeat the same to you so you feel that connection. It's actually been proven to be more connecting than a phone call. So definitely get involved with reaching out like that. Coping mechanisms can include things like team sports, exercising. They can include things like creating, drawing, writing, building, furniture, whatever you want to do. Find something that you love to do, make it a regular task for yourself, and make it fun. Those are coping strategies. They keep you well informed, keep you well guided, and they keep you well rounded. And let's go to the 10th step, the final step in the 10-step plan. The plan, the art of wellness. Here's the plan. Your mental health emergency plan is so crucial. Having your family and your friends and your personal peer protectors opt into your emergency plan so when you can't take care of yourself, they've got your back. What does this mean? This means that they all have a release form signed by them and to your doctor to be privy to your treatment when you're feeling well, so that when you're unwell, they can get your back when you're not doing the best you can. Because if you're thinking of suicide and you're not talking about it, they can literally call your doctor and say, hey, I'm worried about I'm worried about Kevin and I don't know what to do. How was he in his last session? And the doctor, because you can usurp HIPAA privacy laws, they've signed the release form to say that you can be in concert with them, can say, he wasn't doing well, I think he may be suicidal, and I think we need to get him some help right away. And that's actually been something that has helped me stay alive with my suicidal ideations, is the fact that I gave release forms through my family so that my mental health emergency plan could be enacted. And so you want to have all the contact information of your doctors, your personal protectors that you opt in, and have them be in concert with one another. And you want to consider who you want to be opted into that plan. But it can be any number of people you can think of that you can imagine. Now, the plan also includes your symptoms and triggers, what upsets you, what pills you're on, have you stopped taking them abruptly. It includes your story, so you don't have to repeat it to any doctor you might have to see. And it includes connecting all of the peer protectors into one call group or group chat so that when you're struggling, they know how to get to you. Guys, that's the plan. This is the art of wellness. I want it to help you. Take it. It's yours. Run with it and use it to change your life. People as far as Peru, Africa, China, and Japan, and all across America, thousands of people, in fact, have said that this plan dramatically improved their mental and behavioral health. I want it to improve yours. Thanks for listening. It's estimated that 30% of first responders develop behavioral health conditions, including, but not limited to, depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, as compared with 20% in the general population or civilian population. But a new study by the Rudderman Foundation found that first responders are more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty. That's astounding and frankly unacceptable. The study cites suicide as a result of mental illness, including depression and PTSD, which stems from constant exposure to death and destruction. One of the core risk factors for first responders is the pace of their work. First responders are always on the front line, facing highly stressful and risky calls. This tempo can lead to the inability to integrate work experiences with daily life. For instance, according to the study, 69% of EMS professionals have never, I repeat, never had enough time to recover between traumatic events. As a result, depression, stress, and post-traumatic stress symptoms, suicidal ideation, and a host of other functional and relational conditions have been reported by first responders. First responders are always at the forefront of each incident or disaster, and they ensure the safety and well-being of the population. They are, however, at great danger of being exposed to potentially traumatic situations that pose risk of harm for them or the people under their care. This constitutes a great risk for the behavioral health of first responders, putting them at risk for stress, PTSD, depression, substance use, and suicide ideation, and attempts, of course. Both natural and technological disasters were found to be associated with increased risk of these conditions, as were factors such as resiliency, trust in self and team, duration on the disaster scene, individual coping style, and post-disaster mental health support. First responders carry the weight of their own safety and well-being, as well as all of those that they serve, and thus making programmatic changes to educate them, offer them support, and protect their health and well-being would reduce the risk of burnout, fatigue, or other behavioral health challenges, issues, and damages associated with being overworked, uncertain, or severely stressed. Behavioral and public health agencies can help prevent or alleviate the behavioral health challenges and issues in first responders through preventative training on resiliency and behavioral health prior to the disasters or other events and interventions to address burnout, and peer support programs, of course. As noted, such efforts and programs are a cultural shift in fields in which professionals sometimes have coped with disastrous and traumatic experiences on the job by trying to disregard their reactions or using their maladaptive techniques such as substance use disorder, substance misuse, and as more first responders discover this resilience that they can access through the help of others, and particularly their peers, they become better able to maintain their own behavioral health while addressing the myriad of challenges and of disaster response. I want you to meet an incredible leader in law enforcement, my friend, Chief Neil Gang of the Pinole Police Department. Chief Gang has been personally impacted by officer suicide. As a fellow officer and close friend of his died by suicide. Chief Gang has created a model in his department which he named after his friend and fallen officer, the Asher model. And it addresses 7 areas he believes to create a culture of complete wellness.
Back in the late 90s, 97, I was working in Pembroke Pines, Florida, which is in South Florida, right outside of Hollywood, Florida, in Broward County. And, you know, I was working with a buddy of mine. I went to the academy with this individual in Florida. I was actually in his wedding. Just a really, really astute officer, really squared away, ex-Marine, good father. And, you know, I get a call in the middle of the night. It's like 3 a.m. And you're probably a little bit too young for this, but we used to have actually had phones in our houses back then. They weren't cell phones. So when you had a phone ring, it rung your entire house because typically every room had a phone. It woke me up in the middle of sleep, and I got someone screaming on the line saying, "Asher is dead. Asher is dead." And he repeats it one more time and says, "Asher is dead." And Kevin, it was like inaudible. Like I didn't know who it was. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? We're all off. We work the same team. What's he talking about? And then I started getting my senses together. I'm starting to wake up and I'm going, well, maybe he was working an off-duty job and he ended up dying in the line of duty. You know, a risk we all know that we take, you know, when we get sworn in, we know that that's a possibility. And he goes, no, you don't understand. He died. He shot himself. And I go, what? And I remember sitting in my bed, Kevin, I going, what? You know, back in the 90s, no one heard about police suicide. No one talked about police suicide. And I go, okay, you know what? I'm trying to process this all, but it was such a short turnaround because I don't know if you know, but in the Jewish religion, if you die, you need to be buried by the Sabbath. Well, this happened on a Thursday night, late night, Friday morning. He needed to be buried by the next day. So everything happened so quick. I remember going into work the next day and for my regular job. And the most profound thing happened to me in my career, Kevin, when it comes to officer wellness. And I typically ask people when I talk about it, what do you think that was? But I'll abbreviate this and tell you what happened. What happened was the most profound thing was nothing. Nothing. Not a conversation. No one spoke about it. We went into the briefing room. We sat down. I remember a sergeant coming out of the sergeant's office to give us our assignments and our meal periods, and not a mention of Asher, not a mention of what happened, not a mention of anything. I'm sitting there. I remember sitting in the briefing room and I'm going, okay, the chief's going to come in and talk to us. No. I remember maybe a chaplain's going to come in, somebody from crisis awareness type of individual come in. No.
Nothing.
Yeah. So just to make a long story short, because I know we only have a short time together, but the whole point is that nothing happened. The landscaping of policing back then, there was no peer support. There wasn't CISM. There wasn't counseling. There wasn't really anything. But I remember walking out that day, and I remember sitting in my patrol vehicle before I went 10-8, which is going on the street. And I sat back and I said, you know what? I think I'm a pretty strong emotional guy, but I'm suffering here. And there's just no answers. Why did something happen? Why did this happen? And no one's talking about it. And I remember sitting there and saying, if I ever get an opportunity to lead, in a position to lead this profession, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change how we approach these type of events. Instead of sweeping them under the rug because we're embarrassed or the agency's embarrassed, I'm going to actually bring this out into the open. So I've been carrying that on my heart for all these years, Kevin. And that was, like I said, almost 25 years ago. And then recently, with the rise in police suicides and a lot more conversation happening, I met Dr. David Black of Cortico. I don't know if you've met him yet. And we sat down and had lunch, and I shared him this story, and I told him what I want to do. And he said, you need to write something. You need to write an article. You need to do something. And I'm like, I don't do that. That's not who I am. And I'm not interested. And what happened is that sometimes when you want to do something, but the Lord has something else to put on your heart, it doesn't make a difference what you want to do. Well, I was awoken about 3 o'clock in the morning one day and wide awake. And I put this Asher model together in about 20 or 25 minutes, believe it or not. Wow. Not a whole lot of thought. It just, everything was on my heart. And I do believe there was some divine intervention to help me create this. But really, it's just a 7-point approach to creating a culture of wellness in your organization. And the points are, number one is awareness. You have to create awareness, right? Where it's okay not to be okay, that environment. I know that's getting cliche, but it's not only that, but it's okay to not be okay, but we need to bring people back to okay. And how are we going to do that? Right. And then having a solution focused approach, whatever that may be. For us, it was a mobile app, so we could put resources in our employees' hands 24/7, 365. It was the Cortical Wellness app. And we just thought that was the most comprehensive way of bringing resources to our employees. And then 3 was peer support, creating a proactive peer support team so you can have people out there to help people in crisis. And then 4 is teaching people, educating them on resiliency, what that even looks like. Deep breathing exercises, yoga for first responders, the difference between PTSD, PTSI, systems like sleep deprivation and how that affects you. Teaching them on social intelligence and why you react to certain things the way you do. And teaching them social intelligence in regards to trauma and what that looks like. And then 5 was healthy habits. Pretty simple. Providing an opportunity. We created a workout place in our facility. It used to be a Sally port filled with junk and storage, and now it's a $50,000 fitness facility that we were able to create an opportunity for people to work out on duty, which is so important, right? To lower those cortisol levels and be able to de-stress. And then we designed a meal prep partnership with a local company, bring in healthy meals so the officers have healthy meals 24/7, 365. So on a late night, you don't have to go through a drive-through to get a meal. You can go into our refrigerator and get yourself a nice, fresh, clean, healthy meal.
Good gut to brain health.
Go ahead, what?
Good gut to brain health.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last 2 are spirituality. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a man of faith. But developing, a police chaplain program where they're actually a part of your community, your law enforcement community. They're the fabric of your community, not just a side program where they come in and ride when someone's having a crisis, but that they're so used to being around the police department and people are comfortable with them. And then we started something with our community called Pray with the Police. And pre-COVID, we would meet with anybody that wanted to come, all denominations. We didn't care what your religion was. But we met at the public safety building around the flagpole, and we pray for our community and our country, and of course, the safety of all first responders. And then number 7 was the biggest one, Kevin, and this is probably where it will tie into a lot of what you're talking about, family, right? Getting families involved from the orientation process forward. Typically in law enforcement, they would say you have a family life and you have your personal life, and they don't ever interact. That couldn't be further from the truth, and that was the old school way of thinking. We had supervisors tell you, leave that part of your life at home when you come to work. We all know that can't happen, right?
Right.
That's impossible. So they interact with each other and they affect how you are at work. But now, so we bring our family members in from the orientation process forward. They come through, they get a tour of the building, they get to see their loved ones, and they even get a chance to go through our real life shoot, don't shoot scenario system. And then I meet with each family individually. And I meet with them individually because I want to talk to them about the importance of mental health. That their employees, their loved ones are going to change over the next several years because of this profession. And when they come to work, they're going to mask their emotions, right? And they're going to say, I'm fine, I'm great, everything is good. But when they're at home is when their guards are going to be down. And that's where the red flags will show. And unless I champion these family members to feel comfortable to contact us or contact somebody to let them know that their loved one's struggling, we're going to continue to see police suicides. So now we create that opportunity for them to come in, make phone calls, get in touch with our peer support people, build that relationship with them so they can feel comfortable when they see a red flag to make a phone call and pick up the phone. And then before each family member leaves, I give them a copy of Emotional Survivor by Kevin Martin. It's a book.
Yep.
And then the other thing I do is every single family member gets the same exact mobile wellness app that the employee gets. So they have the same resources that those employees have. And then again, of course, teaching and educating our employees from from rookie to retirement, right? And one of the biggest things I'm seeing now is financial elements, where financial fitness just has not been approached or addressed in our profession. Yet we hire 20, 21-year-old kids who are making minimum wage, and now they're making 60, 70, and out in the Bay Area, $80,000, $100,000. They don't know how to manage their money. But yet financial fitness is so important, right? It creates anxiety, depression, if you're not dealing with it properly. So now we bring people throughout the organization and we have them teach them on financial fitness and what that looks like and help strategize so they can have enough money so they can retire. One of the things you see in the profession right now is a lot of retirees are dying by suicide. That should never happen. They're dedicating their lives to this profession for 20, 25 years, and then they're dying by suicide. That's ridiculous. We need to do something. We need to be passionate about it, intentional about it. We need to change outcomes when it comes to police suicide. So that's kind of this approach. I know it's a kind of a shortened version, but it's a multifaceted, level approach because not everything is going to resonate with everybody. You know, Kevin, you may think that yoga for first responders is great for you, where someone else is going to go, I'm not going to do yoga. It doesn't work for me. Yeah. You may believe that sleep deprivation is something that's important to you. Someone else may not. But if you have these multi-level, multifaceted approaches, you're hoping you'll have something in this program that will resonate and create a culture of wellness. Because if your wellness program is just a program and you're just checking off a box, you're going to fail and someone's going to end up losing their life. That's why you have to create this cultural awareness and create an organizational health program.
I want to thank you for being here tonight. You joined over 200 participants in watching the first of a 7-part video series featuring Kevin Hines. My name is Kathy Castle, and I'm the Executive Director of Channel Marker. I work for an organization that's community-based behavioral health on the Eastern Shore. And our training collaborative is very pleased to offer this video to you, and we have 6 others that will follow. And after each video, we will have a live panel of Marylanders that have some experience in the topic that we're speaking about in the video. I have the pleasure tonight of introducing our guest, our speaker here of the videos, Kevin. Kevin is a global speaker, and I do mean global. He speaks all over this world and our country. He's an author. He's a filmmaker. He's a huge advocate for people. And he is a good friend to very, very many people. Kevin's returning to Maryland to do this work with us, for all of us. And it's not only about suicide and education and prevention. He's trying to encourage, as you've seen in the video, wellness, brain health, and to coach us how to survive through pain with a great resiliency. He's literally devoted his life to spreading his passionate message. Hope, healing, and recovery. He's got a great tagline, be here tomorrow, and then he's at it and every day after that. So I'm very happy to bring to you Kevin this evening. Kevin, it's so great to have you. And I know Adrian is going to also There he is. Wave, Kevin. And then Adrian, you have a couple great guests for us.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrian Michler, and I'm the director for the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. And it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our first responder panelists, Steve Thomas and Jen Corbin. Steve is a lieutenant with the Anne Arundel County Police Department. He received his master's from the University of Baltimore in legal and ethical studies. He's been with the Anne Arundel County Police for 24 years, starting in patrol in 1996. And then he became the CIT and peer support coordinator in 2016. In 2019, Steve received the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation Pioneering Spirit Award at the World Congress. And in 2020, under his leadership, the Anne Arundel County Police Crisis Intervention Team Unit was named CIT International Unit of the Year. Steve is the Critical Incident Stress Management Team Coordinator for Anne Arundel County. He's an ICISF approved instructor, a youth and adult mental health first aid instructor, and in 2018, he was named a top 100 instructor at the National Mental Health First Aid Summit. Jen Corbin is director of the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response System. Jen received her master's degree in social work from the University of Maryland School of Social Work in 1998, where she first developed these flawless clinical skills that we all enjoy in Anne Arundel County. She's a trained instructor in mental health first aid, and she's helped train all of our Anne Arundel County Police become certified in the public safety model of mental health first aid, and Anne Arundel County was the first in the country to accomplish this. Jen is also trained in critical incident stress management and helped develop a peer support team for the Anne Arundel County Police. Under Jen's direction, the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response System has been labeled by SAMHSA as one of the finest crisis systems they have seen in the country. And I could also read a laundry list of her professional achievements, but I've been given strict instructions to keep it short. And knowing Jen, she'd rather take this time to talk to you about some of the ways that they can bring help. So we're understandably very proud of everything that these two individuals have accomplished on behalf of our county and the state. And I have to tell you, these two professionals have nerves of steel and hearts of gold. So please help me welcome them and Kevin to answer some of your questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, both Kathy and Ms. Michler. And I want to start by starting off with Lieutenant Thomas. If you could tell us a bit more before we begin question and answers about your experience over the last 24 years in the field of how you have helped shape the Anne Arundel County's CIT and crisis services.
So I think the most important thing is developing a culture of help. Like they said earlier, it's not a checklist. It's having people with a passion to help and then having the tools to be able to do that. And I can think back in numerous incidents. Actually, Jen and I were earlier just talking about specific incidents we could talk about and doing that and having it become cultural that the officers, supervisors on the scene are calling us as it's a live incident, knowing that their officers and the community need help. And with that, it's knowing that we're responding and having all the way from the chief and the executive command staff down to supervisors on the scene, wanting us there, appreciating the help and listening. And there's one incident earlier I was telling Jen that we could talk about where I was called off duty to it was unfortunately a completed suicide of a young person. And the officer on scene, it collided with his world because one of his friend's younger siblings suffered the same fate. And there was no way he could go to work that night. He was working for a community before work. And there was no questions asked when I put him out of service that night because he was not mentally ready to go back to work that night. And he's fine. I mean, he was fine as you can be after that, but we definitely didn't want to put him in that kind of circumstance that night to respond to a call. And so I really think, to reiterate, it's building a culture of help among peers in the police department.
It's phenomenal the way you work with your units and making sure that when they don't feel well enough to complete a task, that you give them the time they need. It's so crucial and must be so appreciated by your officers. Ms. Corbin, if you could tell us about what it's been like improving the collaboration with police, which led to your crisis intervention team. We know in your community it pairs a clinician with a special trained officer in behavioral health. Can you describe that process and why it's so very important?
Yeah, I think what's really exciting and unique is that in many places we're talking about putting the clinician with the police. And I think where it's so amazing, and we talk about that culture of wellness, that our police department allowed the police to come to us. So our police officers sit in crisis response, and it allows for that culture of talking about mental health on a daily basis to happen. An officer can go to any division in our crisis system, which we have many, and talk to a different clinician about a different situation. If you got a question about substance use, you go over to our Safe Station program and talk to those clinicians. You have a question about jail and what's going on and are they getting treatment in our jails, and you go to our jail diversion program and talk to those people so that work here. So I think what's been so amazing in this collaboration is being able to openly talk about behavioral health in general with our officers on a day-to-day basis, which then pours out into our roll calls, into visiting officers that are on the streets every day, checking in at roll calls with them, making sure they're okay. Because we're in constant communication, we know what calls for service are always going on. We're able to check in on the wellness of people after a call because we're hearing them go on all day long in our system.
That's just so amazing, and it brightens my heart to hear that you're so engaged with the community and you're making sure people are safe even from themselves, which is so crucial. Lieutenant, could you talk more about the jail diversion programs you have and how you focus on getting people back into their productive lifestyles as opposed to continuing to be in this recidivism of in and out of jail? Can you break that down in a way, please?
Sure. One of the things I'm really proud that we do is if someone is emergency petitioned and they're inpatient treatment and they have criminal charges, it could be from that incident or a previous incident. Traditionally, what would happen is when the person is discharged from the inpatient unit, they would go into the normal criminal justice system. And then they most likely, if they go to the commissioner, if they're released from the commissioner, they're walking out the door with no assistance. Or they could go to jail for a short time, be released at bail review. Any of the gains in their mental health that happened in the inpatient is lost by no therapy, no medication, and the jail isn't a good place to be. So with that, we started working in cooperation with the inpatient units. Our unit would pick up them upon discharge. We'll walk them through the criminal justice system so that if they are released at the commissioner and there's a peace order against them, they're not going to go and violate the peace order. We'll make sure there's a safe place for them to go. Make sure that their recovery plan is followed. If they go to bail review, we go there too. Work with the judges, the state's attorney, and public defender to assure that there is a long-term recovery plan for them. And to my knowledge, and I'm not great with stats, but to my knowledge, no one that we've helped like that has been recharged with a crime. Because when they are charged and they go to jail, they're not getting the mental health treatment. They need to get it in an inpatient unit, and they just need some social, and we become their social supports to make sure that they are safe. And again, from themselves at time, but it's really rewarding to know how effective we are in helping them.
And what's amazing about that whole piece is when you bring it back to the officers, most of their frustration is and they come to policing to help others. And when you see someone that you arrested or you helped with mental health crisis one day, come right back out with the same issue 24 hours later or 48 hours later, that becomes a frustrating piece in the job that you're doing every day. And it defeats you to start each evening on a shift or every day on a shift if you're interacting constantly with the same person you're trying to help every day. And so this program has really allowed people to see that if they're connected and their mental health is taken care of, then they can move on and help the next individual. And there's a success feeling that really spans out to all the districts of the police departments when they see those good things happening. It was funny, we were teaching a class one day and we were giving a situation, and the officer in the back of the classroom raised his hand and goes, "Hey, that's my district. I haven't seen that person in a year. What's going on?" I said, "You introduced them to us. That's why you haven't seen them in a year. They're healthy, they're well, they're doing what they need to do." But that's the thing that keeps officers going. It keeps the whole program running, is when there's success and you can share that with officers. It makes them go out and feel positive about their job. And I think that's a key to this too, is the mental well-being of our citizens, but also it motivates our officers and our fire departments as well.
So, and to add to that, when Jen and I talk a lot, we talk about having a culture of help, of having a culture where we treat the officers the way we expect them to treat the community. And I always bring up the Disney analogy that Disney treats their employees the same way they expect the employees to treat the community. With that, we see it with the officers. We've had situations where a mobile team was called out to help the community member, and that mobile team recognizes, hey, the officers are having a little bit of trouble with this call. They'll call Jen and we can send peer support out for the officers to give them support. The same as when we're out there to help officers, we can recognize these incidents where we need to reach out to community members. It really is a culture of helping.
I want to ask Jen one more question before we move on to question and answers from the outside. Jen, you have this great response to youth suicides where when a youth dies by suicide, passes away that way, you go to the house, you meet with the individual friends and their families, and you help support for their terrible loss. This opens up the line of communication with parents, guardian figures, probably I'm assuming grandparents, and also given the resources to help them through such a difficult time. Can you tell me about your personal experience doing this and what it's meant to the families of those who have lost their loved ones?
Yeah, this has been something that unfortunately we've gotten, I hate to say good at, but something that we've had to learn to work with, as there's been, some increase in our suicides in our youth over the last couple of years. But what we've learned is that we need to not wait to reach out to families impacted. So when a young person or anybody takes their life, that we're right there meeting with the families. So what we do is the parents tell us who their close friends are, and then we actually go out to those homes before they go back to school. This is pre-COVID. With COVID, we've done it where we just go to the home anyway, but we go out there so that we can talk with the child and their parent. What we have found, there was one that we did where we met with 25 different individual families in one day following a youth suicide. And as we moved along to work with the school system, the 24 hours to 48 hours later, what we're hearing from parents is thank you. It allowed us tools on how to check on our children. Sometimes parents just don't know what to do or what to say or how to support especially a high schooler. They're like not sure what to say or how to check on them. Us sitting there and having that conversation with their child and them in the room opens that line of communication. And it's amazing, as we go along in our community, people will come up and go, I don't know how you do it, coming out to us, but that night you came out really changed it for us and opened our eyes. We provide them with phone numbers they can call to ask questions. We give them starting points on how to talk to their children, websites, different things that they can do. One, because we just want to make sure that you open that line of communication out there so that our youth feel supported.
Fantastic. And the work you're all doing at your law enforcement office is so crucial to not just changing and saving lives from themselves, but to helping people in the community who have lost loved ones to suicide or other means, help them cope and help them move forward in their pain so they can still give back to their society. Do we have any questions from the public that we need to answer at the moment?
Quite a few. So I'll just go ahead and start with those. Kevin, You said there's 3 questions that somebody could ask, beginning with "Are you okay?" Can you repeat those 3 questions?
Absolutely. And just to be clear, these were the, you heard my presentation earlier, but these were the words that I needed to not do what I did. And it was, are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? Or a variation of the 3, really. Let me be clear. My father asked me what was wrong that morning. But at the time he asked me, I was not yet ambivalent. I was not yet believing that I could survive the pain. I was in so much lethal emotional pain that I thought suicide was my only answer. And had my father asked me, Kevin, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? I actually would have told him the truth. Because, and this is it, that asking that direct and blunt and honest question does not put the thought in someone's mind if it's not already there. It actually gives them permission to speak on their pain. And statistically, more people tell the truth when asked that direct question than not. And so asking that direct question, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? On top of, are you okay? Is something wrong? Can I help you? Gets a person who is actually suicidal to voice their pain, and a pain shared, we know, is a pain halved. And so my father, to no fault of his own, didn't ask that question. That was not his fault. Nobody taught Pat Hines suicide prevention, as I mentioned earlier, and I think in the presentation. Nobody taught Pat Hines suicide prevention. What happened next wasn't his fault. But what we can do when we're worried about someone potentially dying by their hands is ask this litany of questions, but preface it really. Don't just start off with, are you thinking of killing yourself? Preface it with, I'm worried about you. You seem like you're very unwell. You've been going through some things lately, and I have to ask you a question. I don't want to offend you, but I really want to ask you this because I am desperately worried about your well-being. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? The crisis text line came out from their algorithm, their back end of their system that studies keywords, proved that by asking the words, are you thinking of killing yourself, rather than asking the words, are you thinking of suicide, are you thinking of killing yourself, got more truthful answers than are you thinking of suicide. So actually the wording is very important. The language we use is very important to getting someone to tell their truth. And I think we can save a lot of lives this way if we have the folks in the community that are doing well mentally, that are stable mentally, that are sane, going out and reaching out to their strong friends and their friends that are visibly emotional and unwell. You don't want to just reach out to the visibly emotionally unwell. You want to reach out to the people that on the surface, they look like they're fine. They look like they're well. They look like they're doing great. When you ask them how they're doing, they say, I'm good, I'm fine, or I'm okay. That's the too typical answer. We need to dig a little deeper and really say, no, I really care about how you are feeling. Why don't you tell me the truth? And if you are great, I'm happy for you. But if you're going through something, I'm here for you in this moment, and I've got your back.
Thank you. Okay, next question. You mentioned that some of your that you allow some of the people in your personal support system to be privy to your mental health treatment, and one of our attendees would be interested to hear what additional ways those people have provided support, and what have you found to be the most helpful and beneficial things that your support system have done for you when you're struggling?
Well, let's see. It's a bit of a two-parter. So
it is.
Let's start with the first part. Is it what else have they done to help me and benefit me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very blessed in the way that, I had quite a few family members and quite a few friends in my friend group that were very supportive of me in the early days. There were some people that couldn't handle it and backed out of my life completely for the rest of my life. And they were not my friends anymore. And that was very sad for me and very devastating to lose friends because you're mentally unwell. But there were a great many folks who showed their support simply by doing things like reading everything they could about bipolar disorder. They would read books like Bipolar for Dummies and Loving Someone with Bipolar Disorder. And they would come back to me and say, I never knew what you were going through until I read these books. And now I understand why you had this behavior at this period of our lives together. And I'm I'm very sorry I treated you this, poorly during that situation. Now I understand, or at least I empathize, and let me help you get through it. How can I be of help to you in your time of need next time? And in that situation, I was able to opt in all of these different people into my mental health emergency plan, like we talked about in the plan. And in doing so, there was so much more support after that, because what I did was I helped them become educated as to my frustrations and my struggles. And thus they were able to better support me, which was amazing. And then the second part of the question, can you repeat that part?
Oh, the second part, what was the most helpful of all the things that people did for you?
I think the most helpful thing for me was when I was in a clinical setting, say a psych ward. I was in 9 psych wards in less than 14 years. And in those psych wards, there was, I would call them 2 parties. There was the party that of the clinicians and the service members there and the people that worked there that were dead into their job, and they didn't care to work there anymore. They were just collecting a paycheck. This can happen in any occupation. I'm not being discriminatory. And they were clearly at odds with all the patients. They were tired. They were overworked, underpaid. They were burnt out, and they were almost aggressive to us in the psych ward when we were struggling. And they just didn't appreciate that we weren't trying to make their lives difficult. We were just really having a hard time and not able to find better wellness at that moment. But then there was the faction of folks in those psych wards that showed you compassion, empathy, caring, even loving and kindness every day, all day long, no matter what you did. And that was, so you push aside the negativity on the other side, and you focus on this positive outcome of these great staff members that really genuinely care about the work they do. And really, that's where things changed for me, because I was in my 3rd psych ward stay of 9, and it was my 3rd involuntary psych ward stay forced in against my will, of which this next 6 psych ward stays I would walk in on my own and say, I need to be here, I won't be here. But the first 3 in that 3rd psych ward stay, these doctors and nurses and clinicians, they ended up guiding me to build my art of wellness. They guided me to create a plan that would sustain me for the rest of my life. And they cared so much, and they showed their empathy, and it really warmed my heart, and it changed my life. It made me see people in a different way, and made me appreciate that some people can handle these things, some people cannot. So what you have to do when you're mentally struggling is you have to go out and you have to find the people that empathize with your pain and that you can share your pain with, so it can be halved.
Thank you. Okay, we got 2 very similar questions, so I'm going to combine them. And this question is actually for all 3 of you, Jen, Lieutenant Thomas, and Kevin. First responders or clinicians or critical care nurses are all facing a lot of burnout right now. What advice would each of you give to them? So I'm going to start with.
Why don't we start with Lieutenant?
Okay.
Lieutenant Thomas, and go to Ms. Corbin, and then I can follow up.
So I think it's important that they have someone they can ventilate to and talk to. I'm really a huge proponent of peer support, that having people that understand what you've been through. As a friend of mine says, they may not have walked in your shoes, but at least I've been in the same shoe store and maybe the same aisle, and have that understanding that you can, and we do that all the time here. We debrief among ourselves, we ventilate. Another thing is it's having the strong social supports to go to when you go home. But I think the most important is that ventilation.
For me, it's what the chief said in the video. It's okay to not be okay. For me, a lot of times I'm getting ready to do it after this video is go check on my staff. It's been a rough week here, rough week. Okay. And I'm going to sit down with my evening staff and go, it's been a rough week, and just let them talk. I think sometimes we have to give permission to each other to say that we're not okay, because we're not allowed to not be okay out there. But what I try to create here in this office is it's okay to let it all out. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be mad at me because we've been really busy, right? But the thing is we have to create that safe space, because we do have to put a little bit of a shield up. We have to go out there. We have to do our job. We have to do it, like Kevin said, with compassion, with caring. And sometimes that really weighs on us. I think we talk a lot about first responders, but we need to talk about clinicians. We need to talk about all our therapists who are sitting on Zooms right now and during COVID, and they're going session after session after session with no break. And it really starts to wear, and making sure that people are getting out and moving, that I love what Kevin said about, healthy eating, gut to brain, it's that healthy piece. So I will confess here, we have a lot of snacks that maybe aren't so good, but that's kind of our comfort food piece when we come in off a tough call.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it's just giving people permission to not be okay.
I think those are two fantastic answers. And I think that, when I think of what we can do to help our clinicians and our first responders in times of COVID and in any issues like what we're facing right now with the pandemic, I think that the biggest thing is like you said, Ms. Corbin, is letting them know that they have a safe space to talk about it. Letting them know that out there they go and they do the work, and they're hustling and they're working hard and they're saving lives, they're changing lives, they're preventing dangerous catastrophes from happening. When they come inside the office, they've got a safe space to unwind, to let it all out, and to tell their truth. I think that's really the most crucial thing we can do, is give them that open space, that freedom to share their pain, and say that you won't be penalized for it. We're not going to judge you. We're going to make sure you're safe and that you're not in danger, but we're not going to judge you. I want people to recognize that we have a lot of tools in our tool basket to stave away from the mental pain that we experience, but not everybody is familiar with those tools. And we have a question now, Kevin. Where can I get a copy of your 10-step wellness program? I want to go ahead and answer that right away. You can go to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kevin Hines. You can go to series on the playlist section, series The Art of Wellness, and there's a 12 video, 10-step, 3 to 5 minute each video, shortened version for you to utilize for your own well-being. And listen, I want you to find hope. I want you to find healing. We all do in this platform. We all want you to find your ability to be well, no matter what you're going through. And I wanted to reach out to that anonymous attendee and say, we're thinking about you. We've got your back. You're not in this alone. And you can get through this one day at a time. I live with all the symptoms and signs and triggers that I've ever lived with. I'm just able to cope with them because of this 10-step plan. So I definitely wanted to help you and anyone who's listening.
Thank you. Another question, anonymous question. What can organizations do to better support their staff's mental health needs?
I think buy-in first. I think what we're blessed with is, and I'm not saying it because my boss is on screen, but the support of the agencies. All the way from the police chief, even our previous police chiefs have always bought into this wellness. So much so that in the police department, they removed one of our great CIT officers who all he does now is wellness. We do yoga one night a week for officers. He talks about the 5 things that he wants to help officers get through. It's that passion to remove someone, a boots on the ground officer, off the road, to make sure we're creating these safe spaces for people to go and be well. And so I think it really, for corporations, we have to show them that putting time in and effort in to do this, you have more productivity down the road. You do. You'll have more employees stay, retention, you will have better performance, and you will have a happier work environment. But it takes people being able to slow down and see that outcome. And it takes a little while. This is not something that happens overnight. This is a process, but we have to start somewhere. And I just think that the buy-in is just kind of getting them to buy in.
Yeah, and just the 5 tenets that our officer wellness program is: mental wellness, physical wellness, family wellness, financial wellness, and spiritual wellness. And it's, once you have all 5 tenets, it's going to make you a stronger person. And you have the family wellness is so important for that strong family support. The chief earlier talked about that our worlds coincide. We can't not bring our home life to work as we take our work life home.
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you. I've had a couple different questions about different apps that you mentioned and that the chief of police in Florida mentioned. And then also somebody had asked, Kevin, at the beginning of your video, this is another two-part question. You mentioned that at night before you go to bed, you like to listen to, it's helpful to listen to whales and waves and things like that. Is that a specific app or is that like a Spotify channel or where are you listening to that from?
I often use the Calm app and the Headspace app.
Okay,
I
thank
have a
you.
subscription of both, but before that, when I was in the psych ward, I would just listen to whale, ocean, rainforest music that came from CDs back when CD players were cool. That's where I got that. When I was my third psych ward stay, I went to my case manager and I said, listen, I'm not sleeping. And she said, here's some pills. And I was like, no, I'm finally taking medication you're giving me with 100% accuracy every day without fail at the same time every day. Give me something, unique for my sleep that's not medication related, something natural. And she brought me a CD player from Walgreens. She went out and bought me a CD player, like a $2.99 CD player. And she handed me her sleep deprivation CDs, which help with sleep function. And one was whale, one was rainforest, and one was ocean noises and music. And they altered my brain waves and brain patterns and sleep function. And in 2 weeks, I was sleeping again. So you can find them online. You can search for them on, you can go to YouTube if you don't want to pay for the Calm app. You can go to YouTube and type in sleep music. You can go into Pandora and do a sleep channel. There's so many opportunities for free radio content with sleep related music that's very beneficial to your sleep patterns.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to do a quick little look, but I think that we managed to get a lot of questions answered, combined and answered. And so I think that will be it for me as far as asking the questions. So thank you so much to all three of you for taking the time to answer everybody's questions. Actually, one more just came in the chat section. This woman, her son was murdered and it's hard to deal with. She pretends that everything is okay to please others, but she is really hurting inside. She hates it when people say to her, "You're strong." How can she say it in a nice way to them? Please don't say that. I say thank you for saying I need help now.
You're welcome for saying I need help now. And if you need help now, please reach out to us in your community. We want to help. In a nice way, let me just say this, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here maybe, but you don't have to be nice. Your son was taken from this world before his time. It wasn't, it wasn't your fault, but, take the guilt out of it, take the upset feeling out of it, and recognize that you get to feel bad. You get to feel really crappy for the fact that your son is gone and you can't bring him back. There's nothing wrong with you. That's not, I think that if you need to tell people, however you need to tell them, that I don't appreciate you telling me I'm strong when I don't feel strong, because that's your prerogative. I would just say, be honest, be true. And if you want to be polite, let them know that you don't feel that way and you don't appreciate that sentiment, and you'd appreciate if they would stop saying that. That's your right. That's your right as an individual who has lost your son, whom I know you love dearly. And I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. And we all wish you the very best. And we know you can get through this.
Thank you. Thank you all to all three of you for answering all of these questions. And that's it from me.
We just had another question come in, and it says, yes, to piggyback off that question, how does one handle being told everybody goes through things? That has bothered me the most. Makes me feel like my pain is invalid.
You really just answered your own question. The response to that is, that makes me feel like my pain is invalid and I don't appreciate it. You're walking over my pain and ignoring it and saying that it doesn't matter. And that's not very kind of you. Be very frank with that. Be very bold. You deserve them to respect that it's not that simple. I hope that helps.
to ask one question I think I am seeing in the chats, and address this toward our critical care nurses and doctors who don't seem to ever get a break. You know, they're delivering very bad news, and sometimes their families may even be distancing from them because they're around COVID every day. And there's a lot of burnout, and I think people are looking to some answers on that topic.
Kathy, you cut out there on my end. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
So I'm seeing some questions from people that are working in critical care, the nurses, the very valuable frontline nurses, the doctors that are working in critical care, and they're around a lot of bad news, just constant with this pandemic, and they're feeling a lot of burnout, and they're just, you know, asking some questions of what do you do with that burnout feeling?
I think in that situation, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that burnout feeling doesn't go away because of the news that they're delivering. I think kind of what Kevin was just saying with the other two questions is we kind of have to acknowledge that it's there and that there's going to be people who don't understand that. Believe it or not, as we are in the EDs as well, we're finding that debriefing together is really helpful. Not meaning that sometimes it's really great. What we're learning through this process this past year is having an objective outsider to debrief with is a little bit more safer. Sometimes just if you're always talking with the people who are going through the same thing, it's great. Like we talk about peer support, but sometimes being able to vent to another individual is helpful as well. So we've been doing a little of that. Like when we're in the EDs, we'll check on a couple of the nurses or people that we see, and they'll be like, no, this is a really crappy day. And it's safer for them to say here because they don't want to say it to their coworker who's in that gut-wrenching piece with them. So I think one of the things that we need to look to do is support each other as different agencies, going in and intermixing the individuals so that we can debrief as a group. Steve and I have been actually working on doing that lately. We've been kind of intermixing fire and police and hospitals because we all bring something different to the table that we can share. And sometimes it's just nice having that voice. Sometimes it's hard when you're in the same field and you're all burned out over the same thing to sit and talk about it because it becomes a complaint session. It's about nobody understands versus that's why therapy works, right, Kevin? I mean, it's when someone sits on that other side and listens to you objectively, you feel heard. Yeah. And that we hear that a lot when we go on our visits. We've been dealing with a tough thing this week, and one person said to me, it was so nice to talk to you because you don't know anything about what's going on that's making me feel so sad inside, and I can just talk to you. So we need to work on mixing the populations when we do these debriefs or when we're offering support. And that might be something that could help for our nurses and our doctors and our individuals in the hospitals.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Do we have any more questions in the queue?
I don't believe so. No, thank you so much.
There actually is one that just came in, and I'm going to jump in. I'm sorry, Dana, we're monitoring different chats. This one, it says, once someone says, yes, I need help, how do you know what to do? When to just be there and listen, or when to take the individual for mental health treatment evaluation?
I think it's going to depend on where they are and what they're saying to you. You know, I just tell people all the time, and we actually use what Kevin said. I mean, it's mental health first aid training, right? We're instructors here, Steve and I. If you're asking those questions, do you have thoughts of killing yourself? Do you have a plan? What is your plan? If you're talking to someone, you have to ask those questions. And if you do not leave them alone. Get help, reach out for help. If you're in an area where there is a crisis response system, get them out. If not, you know, calling police, asking if they have special trained police like CIT officers that can come, that have more of the mental health training. Those are all the things we do in our county, but asking those questions, I can't say it enough that it's so important to ask those. If someone just says, no, I'm just having a really bad day, then I think you can have a conversation with them and see where that goes and how you feel in that piece. But make sure, even if someone's having a bad day, that they have coping skills, that you know they're safe staying or being with someone until they're feeling okay again, or at least feeling less of that heaviness.
Yeah, and if what their experience is creating disorder in their life, you really have to look at, they're going to need additional help. If it's what they're experiencing is changing their quality of life, taking over their life, you definitely want to get them additional help.
Any other comments in the chat boxes? Just want to make sure we're checking both before we close out.
I'd like to read, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll take a quick look while you speak. How about that?
I
Yeah,
wanted
Kevin,
to,
if you could help give us some closing remarks, that would be,
I would love
that would be
to.
so
I
wonderful.
think the best closing remark is this comment by Joy. It says, this holistic approach to mental health and suicide prevention is exactly what we are fostering at Life of Joy Foundation. So grateful for this webinar and hearing what you all are doing. It is also very confirming of what we've been building out. We'd love to discuss community partnerships and serve as a resource for both your teams and the communities you serve. So I think that this evening, we reached the people we needed to reach, and the effect has been positive and productive. And I think that going forward, we know that we can all rely on one another to help in each other's fields and each other's work. And I think as long as we can remember to be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, empathetic, and non-judgmental to every single person we come into contact with, no matter their behavior toward us, because you never know what they're going through or what they've been through, we can always help them be here tomorrow and every day after that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Jen and Lieutenant Thomas. This has been a wonderful evening. The good news is we have 6 more sessions on the horizon. So for those of you who have joined us this evening, we will be back at our next session of the series is on our child and adolescent population. And we will be welcoming some local panelists with lived experience represented from our Maryland Coalition of Families. And really looking forward to gathering again. And I just want to thank our training collaborative. This has been a great first session, and all of you that have attended this evening and stayed with us. We had a large turnout, and a lot of folks stayed along the way. And I hope that we were able to reach as many folks as we possibly could with the messaging tonight. And we're looking forward to continuing to pass it forward. And thank you all for your time. And Kevin, thank you for the gift of your hope. It's really it's so inspirational. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Ms. Corbin.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
Kevin.
all.
Guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Kevin.
Thank you, Dan. Bye now.